So today I want to talk to you about suction pads, and specifically this pump style pad, which is used on many of the Hague car rigs. Now what I really like about this pad is just how secure it is once it's attached to the surface. Now I don't mind using sort of smaller suction pads when using things like GoPro cameras, but if I'm strapping thousands of pounds worth of camera gear to the outside of a vehicle, I want something that I can believe in and something that I know is going to hold it secure, and that's why I really like these pads. I also think that's the reason why these sort of systems are used on programs like Top Gear, because the sort of rigs that you need when you're moving around and have cameras outside of the vehicle need to be secure and reliable. So what I'm going to do today is just give you an overview of how I would attach one of these pads. As I said, it's a pump style pad, which means you have a plunger here, which is used to actually suck out the air, and that's taken out through this little felt pad area here on the pad. So never mess around with that. Now, the first thing I would always do when you've got one of these type of pads is to start by working round the edge of the pad, just to loosen it up slightly. The reason I tend to do this is twofold. One, because the actual material itself, if it hasn't been used for a while, it might be quite firm. And the other thing is, the air is actually drawn out from this sort of dome-shaped area. So again, if it's not been used for a while and it's been in storage, the pad might have flattened out, and that would cause it not to have a very good area for the actual air to be withdrawn from. So all you need to do is just simply move your hands around the edge of the pad and just work it slightly just to loosen it up. Now once the pad's loosened up, I would tend to get a nice damp cloth and just clean the surface to which you're going to attach it. Now these pads will attach to any non-porous surface, so things like body panels on cars, windows, windscreens, but it is important to make sure that the surface that you're going to attach to is clean. So I'd use a damp cloth just to wipe that down to start with, and you can also use the damp cloth just to wipe around the outer rim of the pads, and that way you just ensure that the pad is free from dirt as well. Now when you come to actually attach the pad to the surface, what you want to do is you want to put the pad down and then press around the edge of the pad. So basically around the outer diameter to make sure that the whole pad is in connection with the surface that you're going to be attaching to. The other thing that you want to then do is make sure that as you're holding the pad, you're sort of spreading your hand over the pad or around the pad to make sure you're putting pressure around the outer rim of the pad rather than pressing down in the center. Now the problem if you start pressing down on the center of the pad is you will actually start flattening out the pad, and then you'll have a problem actually withdrawing the air. So I would always put your hand as wide around the pad as possible, and then the pumping technique that you want to use is you want to use a single finger. I tend to use the middle finger, and you want to do quick sharp prods to the actual plunger. There's no point in just gently pushing it like this, because you're going to be there for ages and it's not going to take effect. You need the correct technique on these sort of devices, and the best option is really quick sharp jabs, and you'll notice that as it starts holding and taking effect, you can then slow the jabs down, and what you're trying to do is sort of deeper, sort of stronger jabs just to pull out that last remaining bit of air. And then once the pad's attached, you can see it's nice and firm and solid. With the actual plunger itself, you can notice here that there is a red line on the plunger. Now when you're attaching the pad, that wants to disappear into the socket there, and if it starts coming out at any point, you just need to give it a few more prods, and that will just withdraw the air and increase the vacuum again. Now it should be okay if it's actually attached and the red line is showing slightly, but what you want to avoid is it coming right out like this, as that's a sign that it's losing suction. Now to release these pads, all you have to do is just lift this lug here up, and as you prise that lug up, that will just break the seal and allow you to remove the pad. Now as I've said, these pads, they're extremely high quality pads, but in order to make sure that they attach efficiently and effectively, you really need to make sure that you follow each step correctly. I suppose the two main things is to make sure that the actual technique on the plunger is correct, because if you're literally just pressing it like this, it won't attach. And the other thing to make sure is that you've got a nice dome shape to the pad and that the whole outer area of the pad is in connection with the surface. Because of course, on body panels, they can be slightly curved. And if you've got any gap here, it won't allow you to create the suction.